He's had the phone in his hand for 20 minutes. The apology would take 10 seconds. 6 words. You were right. I was wrong. And he can't say them. Most people think that 1 Timothy 2 is about authority. Men, women, teaching, leadership. And perhaps it is. But what if authority is not the deepest thing being discussed? What if there's something underneath it? Something far closer to home? There are 3 movements in this story. First, a pastor, then a garden, and finally, the cross. And hidden beneath all 3 is the same question. What do human beings do when truth confronts them? People think this passage is about women teaching, men leading, church authority, gender roles, who should occupy positions of leadership. Most discussions quickly become arguments about structure. Who leads? Who follows? Who has authority? Who does not? And then we eventually end up thinking, who gets to speak? The problem is that after 2,000 years of debate, the argument remains unresolved. So perhaps there is another question underneath it. The church meeting ended an hour ago. The parking lot is empty. One pastor remains alone in his office. A folded criticism letter sits beside his open Bible. 3 elders wrote it. Not because he taught false doctrine, not because he lacked knowledge. The letter says he has stopped listening. That somewhere along the way he became more concerned with being right than remaining teachable. Every criticism is accurate. He knows it. His phone is in his hand. All he has to do is message them. 6 words. You're right, and I was wrong. Instead, he opens another commentary, checks another Greek word, builds another defense, anything except surrender. A wife knows she has wounded her husband. She knows it. He knows it. The issue is obvious. But she keeps explaining why she reacted the way she did, why she was hurt, why she felt ignored, why her response made sense. Everything she says is partially true, yet every explanation avoids the one thing that restores communion. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Neither of them is struggling to understand truth. Both of them are struggling to receive it. The issue is not ignorance. The issue is self-protection. The pastor knows exactly what the elders are saying. The wife knows exactly what her husband is feeling. Truth is not absent, yet both continue reaching for control. The pastor controls the narrative. The wife controls the conversation. Neither controls the truth. Self-protection really looks like rebellion. It often looks like wisdom. Patience, discernment, careful consideration, one more conversation, one more book, one more explanation, one more reason to wait. Anything except surrender. The assumption remains the same. If I can just explain myself better, I can preserve myself. Yet, every defense creates more distance. The phone call remains unmade. The apology remains unsaid. Communion waits on the other side of surrender. The pastor is not the first to do this. Neither is the wife. To find the beginning of the story, we have to go back to a garden. Adam received God's word. Then another voice entered the story. Trust collapsed and communion fractured. Blame appeared and self-protection began. Adam does not confess. He explains. He redirects. The woman you gave me. Notice what Adam protects. Not the truth, but himself. Adam is not trying to become evil. Adam is trying to secure himself. Their strategy appears wise. The result is separation. The pastor protects his position. The wife protects her pride. The church protects its certainty. And sometimes the thing being protected slowly begins destroying the very thing it was meant to preserve. The pastor sits alone in his office. The wife sits alone in her car. Adam stands among the trees. Different locations, the same instinct. As another voice becomes more trustworthy than the truth. The pastor hears, protect yourself. The wife hears, defend yourself. Adam hears, cover yourself. Deception enters, communion fractures. People begin protecting themselves. Eden is not merely a place. It is a pattern. And every community is capable of repeating it. Then we arrive at the cross, at another garden of decision. The first garden ends with hiding. The second ends with exposure. Adam disappears among the trees. Christ remains in full view. One protects himself, the other holds nothing back. The first Adam receives truth and hides away. The last Adam receives truth and moves toward the very people who abandoned him. Adam secures himself through blame. Christ restores a communion through self-giving love. The first Adam protects itself. The last Adam pours itself out. Adam says, "The woman you gave me." The pastor says, "They misunderstood me." The wife says, "You don't see me anymore." Christ says, "Not my will, but yours be done." Adam protects himself, and communion breaks. Christ gives himself, and communion is restored. The difference is not merely what they believe. The difference is what they do when confronted by the truth. The passage appears to be about authority, and authority may indeed matter, but beneath authority lies a more uncomfortable question. What happens when truth confronts us? Do we receive it, or do we immediately use it to secure ourselves? The cross exposes the illusion beneath every human attempt at self-preservation. The thing that you are protecting may be the very thing that's destroying you. What are you protecting? The relationship, the reputation, the certainty, the version of yourself you spent years building? Because the easiest person to diagnose is someone else. The hardest person to see is ourselves. We all know what self-protection looks like. We can see it in Adam. We can see it in our pastors. We can see it in our spouses. We can see it in our churches. The question is, can we recognize it when it wears our face? Everyone can see the problem somewhere else. The cross removes that distance. Truth no longer stands across from us. Truth stands before us and asks, what are we willing to surrender? The pastor may lose the respect he spent 20 years building. The wife may hear silence instead of forgiveness. The theologian may discover certainty was never the same thing as faith. Communion, truth, surrender, all come with a cost we sometimes don't want to pay. But the deepest cost is not being wrong. The deepest cost is losing the version of ourselves that needs to be right. The version that must win, must justify, must preserve itself. The first Adam protected himself and lost communion. The last Adam gave himself and restored it. The invitation of the cross is not merely to admit fault. The invitation is to surrender the right to remain the hero of your own story. The pastor finally sends the message. No speech, no defense, no explanation, just, you're right, and I was wrong. The wife finally stops justifying. The apology lands without qualification. Nothing dramatic, no instant transformation, just simple, ordinary surrender. At first, this appears to be a passage about authority, and perhaps it is. But perhaps Paul is asking a larger question. What kind of community is being formed here? A community shaped by self-protection, or a community shaped by self-giving love? A community that repeats Eden, or a community that reflects Adam? Authority is not the final destination of this discussion. The deeper question is revealed in the garden and answered on the cross. What happens when truth confronts fallen humanity? The first Adam protects himself. The last Adam gives himself away. Every debate about authority, leadership, teaching, deception, and formation ultimately unfolds inside the larger story. The church meeting ends. People gather in small groups in a parking lot. Conversations continue. Mutterings about scriptural integrity and who should speak quietly drift into the morning air. Sides quietly begin forming. Certainty hardens. Relationships cool. Nobody notices Eden returning. Nobody sees it for what it is. Nobody sees the serpent. Nobody sees they are standing beneath that tree. Yet the pattern remains. Another voice is trusted. Truth becomes a weapon. The communion begins to fracture. People begin protecting themselves. The question facing Timothy may not simply have been who should teach. The question had been whether the church would become the kind of community that looked more like Adam hiding in the trees or Christ hanging on a cross. The real question is not who gets to speak. The real question is, what kind of people are we becoming when truth finally speaks to us?